The day before the war began, the American ambassador in Israel emailed his staff. Anyone who wanted to leave should do so today. By the next morning, American and Israeli aircraft were over Iran. Nearly 900 strikes in 12 hours. That morning, they killed Iran's supreme leader inside his own compound. For a day, Iran insisted he was safe. He was not. Iran's answer came within hours. Missiles and drones at Israel and at American bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the Emirates. And that same day, Iran began closing the Strait of Hormuz, the channel carrying a fifth of the world's oil. That was day one. 6 months on, and the question it was fought to settle is still open. That question is older than this war. In June 2025, Israel and then the United States spent 12 days bombing Iran's nuclear program. American bunker busters went into Fordow, then a ceasefire, and the inspectors went home. What they left behind was a number: 440.9 kilograms of uranium, enriched to 60%. The International Atomic Energy Agency weighed it on the 13th of June, 2025. That was the last time anyone did. 60% is not a weapon. It is most of the distance to one. Iran ended the inspections that July. In January, the agency put it in writing. It could no longer say how much Iran held or where, so both sides went back to the table to negotiate over a quantity neither could see. And the talks were going somewhere. On the 26th of February in Geneva, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner sat opposite Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, with Oman carrying the messages. Iran's offer: pause enrichment, blend the 60% back down, accept caps and cameras. Washington's position: zero enrichment, and the stockpile leaves the country. The mediator announced substantial progress, and a further round was set for the 2nd of March. 6 days earlier, though, the American president had given Iran 10 to 15 days. On the 27th, he said he was not happy with how it was going. That evening, the ambassador wrote his email. The next round never happened. The war began 48 hours after substantial progress, with the following session still in the diary. 2 operations launched together. The Americans called theirs Epic Fury. The Israelis called theirs Roaring Lion. Israel put around 200 aircraft into Iranian airspace. Central Command's count for the first 24 hours was more than 1,000 targets. That is the American figure, not an independent one. The strike that mattered most was not at night. It was mid-morning. The target was a bunker, some 30 meters down, and reportedly took about 30 precision munitions to reach him. 4 of his family died with him, including his daughter. For the rest of that day, Iran's foreign ministry said he was safe and sound. State television confirmed his death the following afternoon. Iran's reply put debris over 5 capitals, and on the water, the effect was immediate. Within 2 days, about 150 freighters sat inside the Gulf, waiting for a strait that had stopped being a right-of-way. Israel had just done the thing that is supposed to end a system. Within a day, the system replaced him. Iran's constitution has a clause for exactly this. Article 111, a council of 3, a cleric, the president, the head of the judiciary. It met the next morning. Then, the assembly of experts convened to choose a successor. It met online because meeting in person had become lethal, and while it sat, its office in Qom was bombed. On the 8th of March, it named Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead man's son. The vote is disputed. The official account says unanimous. The New York Times counted 59 of 88. There were reports of pressure on members. including threats to their families, and his father's will had reportedly opposed a family succession. A revolution that overthrew a monarchy had produced an inheritance. 9 days later, the man actually running the war, Ali Larijani, was assassinated too, and the new supreme leader did not appear. Not that week, not that month. While Iran rebuilt itself in private, the rest of the world was being handed the bill. Look at the water and it is obvious why. At its narrowest, the Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles across, and the lanes ships actually use are 2 miles wide each way. Everything the Gulf sells passes through that gap. Before the war, between 88 and 130 ships a day. By April, around 10. By the 21st of April, 2,000 vessels and 20,000 crew were stuck inside the Gulf. Brent crude went from the 70s to $100 on the 8th of March and peaked at 126, the largest monthly rise ever recorded. Ships that could reroute went around Africa, 3,800 extra miles. Then America did the same thing in reverse and blockaded Iran. 2 blockades, 1 waterway pointing at each other. And the reach of it turned up where nobody expected. An American submarine sank an Iranian frigate 19 nautical miles off Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's navy rescued 32 sailors and recovered 87 bodies. The total death toll was never independently established. Militarily, the campaign worked. By the measure the campaign chose. Iran's launch rate fell about 92% in 9 days. The Institute for the Study of War assessed more than 60% of the launches gone. Israel claimed 75%. But the Defense Intelligence Agency told Congress that Iran still held thousands of missiles and one-way attack drones. Degraded is not disarmed. The human cost has to be said carefully, because every count comes from someone with a reason to count. Iran's health ministry, 3,528 dead. The rights group, Harana, 3,684. Israel, 71, 31 of them civilians, around 32 civilians across the Gulf states, 18 American service members. And by the middle of March, 3.2 million people displaced inside Iran. Stopping it turned out to be harder than starting it. The broker was not Geneva or Vienna. It was Pakistan. The American vice president flew to Islamabad, and on the 8th of April came a conditional pause. The talks that followed ran 21 hours without a break. They agreed a roadmap for everything except the 2 things the war was about, the strait and the uranium. They failed. The blockade followed. In May, the White House declared epic fury concluded and put its total above 13,000 targets. Independent tallies put it between 8 and 10,000, and the coalition was shifting underneath Washington. Saudi Arabia refused American aircraft its airspace. Kuwait restricted access. Russia and China vetoed the Security Council resolution that would have authorized reopening the strait. Then, on the 17th of June, there was a document. Trump and President Pezeshkian signed it in Islamabad. 14 points. The strait reopens. The blockade lifts. Sanctions are waived. 60 days to a final agreement. And point 8, Iran reaffirms in writing that it will not build a nuclear weapon. Read the text, though, and the flaw is in the language. Safe passage is not a right in that document. It is best efforts, and free of charge for 60 days only. Iran kept the keys and called passage a favor. In July, Iran finally held the funeral for the man killed in February. 5 cities, 6 days. During it, ships began burning again. Britain's Maritime Authority logged 20 incidents. On the 8th and 9th of July, America answered 170 targets in 48 hours, and the president declared the ceasefire over. The blockade came back. The paper had not resolved the dispute. It had written it down. Which brings us to this week. On the 17th of August, the memorandum's 60 days ran out. There was no final agreement. Pakistan said it was not closing the chapter. Iran's foreign ministry said something stranger, that there had never been a 60-day deadline in the text at all. The American president said he was in no hurry and threatened to bomb Oman, the mediator, if it got in the way. Iran wants the strait, the right to charge for it, the blockade gone, American forces out, and reparations. Washington says it controls the strait already and that Iran should be the one paying. In the week to the 16th of August, 73 ships made the crossing. That is twice the wartime average and still less than a single day's traffic before the war. The oil, though, did not stop. It rerouted. A Saudi pipeline now carries millions of barrels a day to the Red Sea, around the strait, and the Houthis have begun attacking tankers there. America's Energy Secretary counts 15 million barrels still leaving the Gulf each day, against 20 before the war. Diesel in America is over $5 a gallon. And Iran's supreme leader has still not appeared in public. On the 10th of August, state media released a video of him, under 15 seconds. No date, no location. 6 months, 3 governments. What did any of them actually get? America wanted an Iran that could not build a weapon and could not project force. It got a dead supreme leader, a degraded missile force, and inspectors who can still reach 1 power reactor and none of the enrichment sites. A classified assessment, reported in the American press, put the nuclear setback at less than 6 months, against public claims of severe damage. Israel wanted the threat removed. It carried out the most complete decapitation in its history. More than 40 senior officials. The arsenal is smaller. The nuclear question is untouched. Iran lost its leader, its commanders, and the working economy of its cities. 3.2 million of its people are still displaced, and it survived, passed power father to son inside 8 days, closed the world's oil artery, and outlasted a superpower's patience. Every government involved can prove it won something. None of them can show it was worth it. And the number is still sitting there. On the 13th of June 2025, inspectors weighed 440.9 kilograms of uranium for the last time. It has gone unweighed through a ceasefire and through this war. The killed leader, the closed strait, the 13,000 targets. As of the 24th of August, 437 days. When inspectors could last point to it, it sat at Esfahan, Natanz, and Fordow. Where it is now, in what form, in what amount, the agency can no longer say. Iran says the inspectors come back when the sanctions end and the blockade lifts. This war could reach the supreme leader in his bunker. It could reach the sites. It has not reached an answer.